Hi, I'm Candace, and welcome to Fitness and Harmony's 12 poses for osteoporosis. The bones are the things that give us shape and structure. They're what holds us up. They're what the muscles move. And bones are constantly what they're called remodeling. They're always breaking down, they're always reforming because there's always changes in our bodies. And the vascular network, the rivers of energy are always shifting and adapting. And then the bones have to adapt. So around about the age of 30, we start losing a little bit more bone than we start building. And then again, at 50, there's kind of, especially for women in menopause, there's a huge drop in the amount of bone building. So a study has shown that yoga helps build the bones. So they came up with 12 poses and had people do them for 10 years. Then they measured their bones and they found that it was very bone protective to do these 12 poses. So as we go throughout here and we start into our yoga practice, I'll tell you which ones I think are the best and ones you may want to leave out. It just depends on what's going on in your particular circumstance. Let's come to the mat, take a seat, and begin to create a space for profound presence. Turn the hands up, lift the spine up through the top of the head and draw the abdominals upward. Lower the eyelids down. Take a breath in through the nose. And let that breath go, pulling the belly in a little bit more with each exhale. I want you to begin by making a space for profound presence, sculpting your consciousness to now. With every exhale, I want you to draw your mind into your body. We call this mindfulness, but really we should call this bodyfulness. The mind is always present, it's always on. Practice drawing your consciousness into the now, into the body. With every exhale, draw the front of the belly up the front of the spine. Do this 3 times. Begin vibrating the back of the throat, hearing, feeling, and sensing the vibration of energy as it flows. All we're doing today is taking some yoga in a very small, manageable commitment, not trying to do too much, too quickly. One more breath. Good, and then open your eyes. Let's begin by just tipping the head slowly side, center, side. We're going to do 12 poses, and really 12 poses only. Once we get warmed up, we're just move the joints around a little bit. So we're using the muscles today as the resistance. Sometimes we have cables and pulleys and dumbbells, but today the resistance is the muscles. Now slowly drape the head down and twist the head gently right and left. All right, the spaces in between the vertebrae, they have these little fluid-filled, like disc, sponge-like material. Now we always just lose fluid as part of the healthy, aging process. So it's natural that those bones get closer and closer together. Lift the head back up. Now I want you to practice gently turning your body, your upper body, without pulling with your hands. So if your hands can reach the floor, push down on the floor or even the leg so that the spine is spiraling upward. So the one little warning I'm going to give you about these 12 poses, and there are 12 poses we've done many times. There's really nothing so new here. The only warning I'm going to give you is that if you choose to do these 12 poses, let's say every day for the next 10, 20, 30 years, watch out for the twisting poses, especially the twisting ones where part of your body is bound. In this case, the bottom part of our body is bound to the earth. Something called gravity is holding us down. So don't twist too far because the spine isn't really made to be like an owl's head. We're not made to turn all the way around, even 90 degrees in most cases. Now slowly practice going the other way. Remember, we're pushing down to lift the spine up. So we're using gravity. We're using gravity and the own pull of muscles. Muscles are naturally going to be relatively tight and holding. That's how they just are. We're going to use that pull and move against gravity and against the natural pull. So push down against gravity and use that abdominal corset, the waist muscles, to pull up the front of the spine. Now inhale, exhale, and fall into a natural rhythm of the breath. So that the mind, remember I said the mind is just full inside the body, can seek a new dimension. So maybe that dimension for today is up. Do one more of those natural breaths. And move back to center. Let's start out in hands and knees pose. All we're going to really do is go through those 12 poses, but I want to warm up the spine first. So what they discovered, as you're moving from cat, rounding the spine, and cow, extending the spine, welcoming Phineas to the practice, is that the spine benefited the most from yoga. Not really a big surprise there. The spine is the major highway of energy and mindfulness. The hips came in a distant second. Other bones, not as much. But if we can retain the openness in the spine, then the vascular network of blood and oxygen, remember we get that oxygen through breathing, it has the ability to reform and adapt and get to all the muscles and all the organs of the body. So I'm not going to say forget cardiovascular exercise, not by a long shot. Any weight-bearing exercise is going to be good for your bones, but we can get some of those same benefits by doing these 12 postures. And this is not one of them. Don't worry. I'll tell you the 12 and then we'll rehearse them. So I'm going to invite you to come up to standing. Probably the safest way, let's say you have an injury or your back just isn't moving well, is to step 1 foot forward and to push off that thigh. It's okay to push off a piece of furniture. People always ask me, is it okay to push off the furniture? Of course it is. It's your furniture. Let's come to mountain pose. So these 12 poses are, I guess there are about 6 standing poses and then 6 laying down poses, something like that. The first one is going to be tree pose. So find mountain pose first. Feet shoulder width apart, rock to the toes, rock to the heels, rock to the inner and outer edges of the feet. Maybe circle the knees around a few times one way, then the other, and then lift the kneecaps up. So imagine that you're taking kind of your pant legs here and pulling up, 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 up. Once you get to like right up under your ribs, front and back, all of that's pulling up, then spread the chest and the shoulders out and down. So there's something here holding you in. There's something here holding you up. Now with the crown of the head lifting, take a few of those rhythmic breaths to feel the embrace of the abdominals. Remember I said bones are just the things that give you structure and they're constantly reforming. But muscles are the things that can move the bones. So let's rock to one foot, shift the weight and turn this other leg out. Now you might lift your foot up and put it up to the inner shin. If you think that you can, grab your foot and bring it to the upper inner thigh. The way that that stays stuck there, it isn't glue. The way that stays stuck there is the squeezing in of the leg muscles. So imagine you had one of those balls and you're squeezing the thigh bones in towards each other. That's the key to this version of tree pose. It's not a sticky foot, although. Stay here for another 3 breaths. The whole idea here is to pull in and up. Remember, you're pulling up underneath those ribs. Inhale, exhale, invite all parts of the breath, all parts, all the muscles. Remember I said they're squeezing in. One more breath. And then try the other side. So kind of rock around the clock, find all parts of the legs, the hips, and then the waist and the spine and the shoulders. So do a little wave through your body and then set. Shift over to the other foot, turn this other leg out. Now squeeze both sides of the waist and both sides of the hips in. This one's not as easy for me. I don't know why. This is interesting. This is not my injured foot. This is the injured foot that I was standing on before. So why is this one more difficult? Don't know. Use all of your muscles here. So imagine you're on like some big pulley system, fantastic exercise machine, some magical machine, and all your muscles are having to do something. So whether your arms are expressing tree branches or they're holding Anjali Mudra, have all of your muscles brought into kind of the purview of the mind. 3 manageable breaths. 2, keep cinching in the lower waist and squeezing the legs together. And 1. I'll bring the leg down. Now step 1 foot forward and angle the other leg back. Let's just pause here. I always really like to make sure I set up each and every posture well before we get into it. And then try shifting your hips forward and back. Give this a couple of test run. It's the hips that I'm shifting forward and back. I'm just not leaving my spine straight. If I were leaving my spine up, my hips would look like they were rocking. They are rocking. But if I move my spine with my hip, it looks a lot different. What I'm not doing is just moving my spine. So notice the difference. Give this a few more breaths to make space for a profound presence inside of your body. Begin to feel the muscles on the front and the back of the leg, this inner and outer thigh. Then tip forward and just hold there. Notice I'm not setting up your arms a lot here. I'm not doing a lot with the upper body. Of course, in traditional triangle, Trikonasana pose, we come down as far as the hips will allow, and we spread the arms out. After 2 breaths, remember the same thing. We're still doing that inner pulling inward and upward, cinching up underneath the ribs and then spreading out from there. Bend this front knee, come back up. So you should feel that coming up. Then do spread the arms out in Warrior 2. Now take a second to align. I could stay in this pose for about an hour because there's so many small alignment cues. It is said that if you want to learn yoga to build your bones, to figure out how this works, that you're really building bones, they say take a Iyengar class. That's the kind of yoga which we sort of do here, which is we're working on alignment and focus rather than moving from pose to pose to pose. So front knee 90 degrees, not wobbled in or out, back leg straight and strong with those leg muscles pulling inward. Remember, pull and squeeze like you're putting on, something that's cinching you in at the waist. 2 slow breaths. Remember, we're getting into the rhythm. To feel what it's like to have support that's inside of you. Then from here, tip forward. I'm going to bring this elbow to the knee. That's all I'm going to do. And hold that. This is called extended angle pose. So the first pose was tree. The second pose was triangle. The third pose was that Warrior 2. And now we're at side angle pose. Doesn't even matter. You can remember them. What matters is that you spend about 30 seconds in each pose, which is about how long I'm spending. And I'll tell you in a second how you know without looking at a clock. Another breath. Notice quietly kind of the back leg muscles. Come back up. Now lift this back heel and turn that leg so you're facing mostly forward. Bring this opposite hand, we'll call it the front one, around. That's as far as I'm going to go. That's as far as I'm going to go. Revolved Triangle involves spinning your upper body essentially all the way around to the opposite side and then dipping forward with the front knee now straight But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay facing in that direction. And here's the reason. I began practice telling you that if the low back is twisted too far, that begins to twist the spine into the pelvic bone. It's called the sacroiliac joint. And that spells sciatic pain. That spells problems later on. And that's the last thing I want to create here. So I don't really do revolved triangle because a lot of times these legs have the pelvic bones locked in place. So all I do is sort of forward fold over this front leg, and that's enough for me. But it's called revolved triangle. 2 more breaths. Bend the knee to push up. Turn all the way to the other side. So spin your body around. This is where we're starting with the triangle again. So play around with the hips, rocking the hips. So play around with what the hips are doing here. And one of the things I like about the 12 poses for osteoporosis is they're mostly standing to begin with. And what I found is getting on the floor is a challenge. And in fact, Tai Chi, which is all standing, slow energy movements, is very good for balance and for preventing fractures. So while yoga's been shown to build bone density, here we go. Triangle pose, rock forward, hold. Try to get your body as much into one plane as possible. Tai Chi and slow moving balancing poses help create the balance and stability that prevents falls, which really are the number one danger in aging. Take 3 breaths that embrace all parts of you, all those messed up parts, all the pieces that are meandering around that you're not paying attention to. Right now, I'm not paying attention to the upper body. You might notice that. Bend the front knee to push up. Remember, we're righting the hips, stretching the arms out. Warrior 2. I like to stay. Warrior 2. And the next one's going to be extended angle because the legs are really getting a huge lesson on what it means to support you. What are those lower abs doing? Keep engaging them. Keep drawing them in to the center and pulling them inward and upward. Keep realigning. Make little shifts. Left and right, forward and back, up and down. Remember that gravity is kind of our number one tool for building bone. If we didn't have gravity, our bones would essentially disintegrate. So because the bones keep remodeling, 2 more breaths, we're using that gravity. So kind of the lower you go, the more benefit you're going to get. With the abdominals drawn inward, upward, hinge forward. We're really crunching right there. You should really feel that there's like not enough space for the stuff you might have here. So extended angle becomes a really challenging pose for that reason. It forces the body to make space and to remodel. Remember, we're only doing small, manageable, approachable, accessible increments. We're not doing everything all at once. 2 slow breaths here. Good. Come back up. This is where we lift that back heel. Lift that back heel. Turn kind of to the front. Use this back arm, turn or twist around. I'm just going to bring my hand to this front knee. That's enough. I'm not going to spin and risk hurting that low back. Straighten the front leg, maybe dive a little forward. Remember, our goal is always to elongate the spine. So if you have one goal, and that is to protect the spine into a very, 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 very old age, then your muscles should all be working together to lift the spine up. Remember that spiraling upward. And this protects us. The more we have, the more it protects us from like falling. So learning how to move in and out. And by now you may be wobbly on your feet. So about 30 seconds in each pose. Remember those poses were tree, triangle, Warrior two, side angle, revolved triangle. One more breath. Push off and come back up. Let's make our way back down to the floor. So again, if you were doing this, you're saying, what were those 12 poses? You don't always have to flow. That's a specialized version of yoga where you're flowing. Come down to the hands and knees. Cat and cow, this is not part of it, but I think that this feels so good. I hate to leave this out. And then come down to the belly. Bring the hands next to the side ribs and squeeze the elbows together. Next one is Locust or Salimbasana. Walk the legs together. So you notice how I rock side to side? That's getting all the flesh of my legs so that my leg bones can get together. Maybe, eventually. The whole point here in Salimbasana, locust pose, is to lift the legs. So you're curling up the ends. And you do lift the chest some, but you're mostly lifting the legs. Now this pose, Salimbasana, is the 6th of the 12. But this one I want to point out as an extra specially good pose. If you did have that sciatic, if you did have low back kind of crankiness, this is a really, really good pose to restore the blood flow and to restore strength in the low back. Remember, I said the point of this, or the whole concept, is you're lifting the legs up without crunching the low back too much. So don't squeeze the glutes as much. 3 breaths. How do we know we've done about 30 seconds? Well, for most people, that's about 4 to 5 breaths. For me, it's about 2 to 3 breaths. So that's why I always do my little talking and then say 2. And 1. Let's push back into child's pose. This is not one of the poses. So the poses I'm interspersing in between the 12 are poses to restore the quiet rhythm of the body healing, which means taking in the lesson. So just breathe. Let's just take in the lesson. If we were to do 30 seconds, let's try it. I'll call that 4 breaths. Here we go. Inhale. Exhale. That's 1. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good. That was about 30 seconds, but I lost count whether it was 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 breaths. Let's come around to the back. So it does matter how you get from place to place. It does matter, but we're not doing it in a yogic way. So the next one is bridge pose. A lot of you already know it. So set up with the heels in close to the glutes. So walk them in. Set up by walking the shoulder blades down. So it's almost like your heels and your shoulders are trying to get towards each other, like you're squeezing those ends together. With the knees a little bit magnetized towards each other, lift the hips up, press the arm bones down into the floor. All right, here's another extra special good one. There's so many good things going on in bridge pose, but for the purposes of the low back, the spine, it's training the gluteals and the hamstrings to do the lifting. Now they're very, very, very big muscles, so it's a good thing for those muscles to learn how to hold the low back in place. Remember, the inner thighs are magnetized towards each other. There's a pull going on there. Let's do 2 breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Again. Exhale. Come all the way down. Draw one knee into the chest, stretch the other leg out. The next pose is called reclining hand to big toe. Reclining, that means you're laying on your back. Right? I'm reclining. Hand to big toe. Done. So it is kind of done. So there's many different ways you can do this. The same hand, usually they use the two, what they call peace fingers, to loop around the big toe. That's generally the way they talk about it. And then trying to lengthen or extend the leg up. For the rest of us, maybe we grab a strap, loop it around the foot, and stretch the leg up. Let's do it that way. Now, once you find your niche, once you find your pose, go inside. This is another magical pose because the back is supported, so you're really not going to hurt your back here. But those tight hamstrings that absolutely everybody has are forcing a stress. And I know you feel the stress on the bones of the legs. And when there's stress on the bones, that triggers the bones to lay down new bone. That's the whole point of this. Now do 3 breaths. Now I'm going to take this leg that's up and bring it out to the side without lifting your opposite hip up off the floor. So this is why I almost always use the strap, because now I know I can do this and I can use the strap to keep from having to, well, bend another joint that I don't need to bend. So we were just manipulating the front and the back of the leg to create forces on the bones of the legs and the hip so they would create new bone. Now we're working on the inner and outer. So this is pose 9. So it was tree, triangle, warrior 2, side angle, revolve triangle, sort of. Locust, remember that one? That's our face down and legs up. Bridge, reclining hand to toe, that was called 1. And then with the leg out to the side, reclining hand to toe, 2. 3 slow breaths. And now, especially if you have the strap, if you have the strap, then just let go. But especially if you have the strap, let go and bend your knee first. Then even maybe you use your hand to get that leg back to center. Let's go over to the other leg. So we'll go back through. Reclining hand to big toe. Hand, big toe. You're done. Notice what poses are not in this series. Well, low lunge is not in this series. But forward folds. Did you notice there's no forward folds? You know, the one we sit there, we stick our legs out, and then we fold forward. Do not do that one. It's the very first pose we all fall into just by, it seems natural. But when I say do not do it, if you have any concerns about your bones' health, your bones are not, strong, any of it's called osteopenia, maybe your bones just aren't as strong as they could be, do not do that one. It puts a lot of pressure on the low back, puts a lot of pressure on those bones. And if those bones are a little bit weakened, you really are spelling trouble for the low back. After 2, and take that leg out to the side. Without lifting the other hip up. Three. 2, and 1. So you can just let go, but bend the knee before bringing the leg back to center. So we're on our way back up to a seated pose. Again, safest way is to roll to one side and push off. Use your arms to push up. Don't just fling the body up like a boomerang. I won't get into that because I have to tell you about the seated pose called Sage's pose, with one leg extended out and the other knee bent. Now you can cross this ankle over to the other side. In fact, that's the pose, but I'm not going to do it that way. What's important is that you're able to sit at the front edge of your sits bones. If this leg is in your way, you can't sit at the front edge of the sits bones. So don't make it worse by trying to really wrap it around. Move it away from you, come to the front edge of your sits bones, and then turn towards the leg. Use your hands to gently pull the knee towards you. So this is called Sage's pose or Marichyasana. And typically it's done with the leg crossed over and the opposite elbow to the outer edge of the knee. I've given up doing it that way. I can do it that way, but I've given up doing that because I'm always protecting my sacrum, my sacroiliac. You can have that arm to the inner edge. There's another option. But what's most important is the thing we did at first. Spiral the spine upward. That was why we practiced that, so that you don't get caught up in trying to make the pose look like we're forcing it. When you force puzzle pieces, I do it. When you force puzzle pieces, you go, yeah, that fits there. Not good for the puzzle, definitely not good for those joints, which may have been compromised because as we age, we don't lay down nearly as much bone as we did when we were young. And now we may be asking for trouble. After 2 breaths, this is called Marichyasana or Sage's pose. I got that reversed. This is Lord of the Fishes pose or Masyandrasana. The next one is very similar. You'll see why I got it confused. Bend this foot underneath. And essentially the upper body is in the exact same pose. So this is Marichyasana with the bent knee. That other one was Lord of the Fishes pose. They're both trouble for the low back. So I'm not going to make a big deal about you having to do either one of these. Let's try switching legs. One leg out. Remember, this was Lord of the Fishes. Turn towards the bent knee. But remember, what's important is that you're at the front edge of the hip bones there, the front edge of the sits bones, and the spine is lifting up. This may not look like much of an exercise or a pose, but if you can maintain really fantastic, straight, upward lifting, lift the breastbone up posture, that's going to prevent the thoracic, the upper back bones from collapsing and curving and curling onto each other. And the neck bones, I can say a lot about how the neck bones sort of, it's like a slide, they slide down into that big hump there. And then they get too close. Now bend this long leg, take it up and under, almost like this foot's trying to wrap around to the opposite hip. And then do that upward lifting spiral again. Remember, this one is Sage's pose. And the other one was Lord of the Fishes pose. I don't know. Maybe that long leg out is like a fishtail. It's a way to remember. Either way, these are numbers 10 and 11. Either way, these are ones I have a big asterisk next to so that you don't try hooking the elbow all the way around. In fact, we're supposed to be able to wrap this hand underneath this front leg and have my 2 hands meet. And you'll see a lot of yogis can do that. After 2 breaths, not this one. And release. Let's just come to Sukhasana for a moment before we get into Shavasana. Shavasana is number 12. But come to Sukhasana because I want to add in Sukhasana Easy pose, because what I just said, anytime we're actively working on posture, lifting the crown of the head, squeezing the abdominals in, lifting the front and the back of the spine against gravity, we're building bone. But what Sukhasana has, the other ones don't, that Shavasana has, is that it gives us time to settle in. Stress and the hormones, cortisol, etc., have a deleterious effect, meaning they get bone to go away. They delete bone. So if we can manage our stress by a breathing practice, let's do those 3 breaths again. Let's see if that can be 30 seconds. I'm going to slow it down now. Here we go. Inhale. Exhale. That's 1. Inhale. I'm counting to 5. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good. So that was 30 seconds. So it was just 3 breaths. Come all the way down to the back. I want to practice the most important pose of all, and that's Shavasana. As you're settling into Shavasana, and you're letting there be a natural curve, so we're no longer trying to alter how the body is holding the bones. In fact, the opposite. More and more as you come into Shavasana, work on letting gravity and the earth make the pose. Now begin to create a rhythm of breathing. Maybe a shallow breath or a deep breath. Just impose a rhythm. Like a soothing song. That nurtures your soul. Three breaths. 2 more. And when you get to 1, begin to roll to your side. Open your eyes. Begin to push up off the floor. Make your way up and come back to that Sukhasana. Remember, this was the whole idea, is that we collect, we unify, or yoga, our mind, body, and soul back into this one. Remember, correct your posture, most important thing you can do. And then inhale and circle the arms up overhead, touching all. As you exhale, go back into that place of abundance and joy, and I honor you there. Namaste. Thanks, everyone.